Hi, Tony Melvin here. Now I want to talk to you about how important is your credit score, and is your credit score keeping you broke or poor? I run into a lot of people that have found themselves in overwhelming debt, killer debt, which is debt against things that do not go up in value. One of the rich habits is the rich use debt to invest, which is investment debt, whereas the poor use debt to spend, which is killer debt. Now, when a person or a business finds themselves in lots of killer debt, they often get into a position where they really don't know how to get out of it. And now a lot of people then become worried about their credit score, and they become very desperate about maintaining a good credit score or credit rating, depending on where you are in the world. They call different things. But quite often people end up in a situation where their credit score, trying to maintain their credit score, is actually keeping them broke or poor. And I want to give you an example of this. Now, firstly, the credit score industry or the credit rating industry is actually a new industry. It hasn't been around that long. I think the term credit score was first started to be used about 60 years ago. But the whole industry is less than 100 years old. 100 years ago, the way you got a loan was simply by your character. People recommended you and you were able to borrow money. And you didn't always borrow it from a bank either. You borrowed it from some wealthy individual or a landowner or whatever it might be. But today we have this whole credit score system. So I want to go through with you some scenarios, 3 scenarios. The first 2 are typical scenarios of ways of people that try to get rid of their credit card debt while maintaining a good credit score. And the third scenario is the rich habits method of simply eliminating it fast, getting rid of it very fast. Now we'll call these people Bill, Dave, and Jane. Now these 3 people, they all earn the exact same amount of money. Let's say they earn an annual salary of $60,000. They've each got a credit card debt of $50,000. And they're all paying 18% interest on this credit card. And they can each afford to pay only $800 a month towards the balance. Now Bill, taking our first scenario, Bill, he pays $800. Now Bill's very worried about his credit score. He tries to maintain it, so he pays the $800 every month. He pays it on time. He can't manage to pay anything else because he doesn't have it spare. And it's going to take Bill, paying off this credit card, it's going to take him 15 and a half years to pay off $50,000. In fact, in total, I look at my computer screen here, I've got all the numbers. It's actually going to cost Bill, or Bill's going to pay $148,800 in order to pay off this credit card. And it's going to take him over 15 years. Now, because Bill is only paying $800 every month, he doesn't really have a good credit score because he's still got, $50,000 worth of debt. So he's not paying much towards the debt. So he's going to probably have a below average credit score, even though he's paying regularly. That's scenario 1. Now let's have a look at Dave, scenario 2. So what Dave does is he goes out and he gets another credit card, or he gets several credit cards, and he uses what's called a balance transfer. Now, balance transfer is the way you get a new card, you transfer all your money on your old card onto the new one, and you pay no interest for anywhere from 16 to 18 months. So what Dave is doing is trying to save himself the interest and pay off his card. So he does this, and hopefully he can actually get the new credit cards. We're assuming that's the case. But if he does this, and Dave manages to do this every 18 months, he gets new credit cards, balance transfer, he doesn't spend any more, he just pays the $800. Well, it's going to take Dave just over 5 years to actually pay off his $50,000. And he will pay only $50,000 if he does it that way. So he saved a heck of a lot more than Bill by eliminating interest and using what we call the balance transfer method. So that's a pretty good way to go. But there is even a better way than that. And depending on your situation, you may want to utilize this. Now, what I'm about to show you is covered in detail in my book, Rich Habits. And this is called the Rich Habits Solvency System. And it's all about getting rid of your killer debt as fast as possible. So what Jane does is she actually stops paying her credit cards immediately. She puts them under control. She puts them all on hold. And then she starts saving that $800 a month. And she puts it in a special account, which is purely for her killer debt. And then she negotiates with each of the credit card companies, or one credit card, if she's only got the one credit card, she negotiates with them and pays out 10% of the balance. So instead of paying $50,000 towards these credit cards, she only pays $5,000. So she negotiates this. Now this process can take about 6 months. At the end of the 6 months, she then pays out, she's saved over a 6-month period, she's saved $4,800. So she scrapes around next to $200 and she pays it out, and now she's got no killer debt and no more credit card. Now you may wonder what happens to Jane's credit rating at this point. Well, Jane's going to have a pretty bad credit score or credit rating. But what Jane can now do is, in practicing the rich habits, and she would have been doing so for the last 6 months, is she can now set herself up where she's got money in the bank and she's allocating and putting money aside. And within about a year or two, Jane will actually have a good credit score and will be able to borrow if she wants to. But you see, here's the interesting part. Borrowing or having a good credit score is only desperately needed by people who practice poor habits. If you're overspending and spending more than you make, then you have to have credit cards and debt in order to spend that extra amount of money. And that is really a poor habit. So it's the people with poor habits who desperately hold on to a credit score because they need it. Whereas rich habits, people with rich habits, they don't. And they also know that you can actually borrow money from other sources other than banks and so on if you're investing. There's plenty of ways to get money when you're investing. But when it comes to killer debt and trying to get killer debt, yeah, you need a good credit score. So by doing this method, it's like an instant reset method, Jane is able to get rid of all of her killer debt and then build up her credit score over the next 2 years. And if we look at the summary of this situation, I'll put up this chart here. Here we have Bill, Dave and Jane. Now they both had $50,000 credit on debt on credit cards, paying 18%. They're all paying $800 a month. And it's taken Bill over 15 years to pay it off. It's taken Dave just over 5 years to pay it off. But Jane, using the killer debt or the rich habit solvency system and getting rid of her killer debt, has gotten rid of it within 6 months. Bill has paid over $148,000, Dave's paid $50,000, and Jane has only paid $5,000. So the difference here, when you look at what's it actually cost Bill to try and keep his good credit score, try to keep his credit score up, it's cost him over $143,000 more than it has Jane. Now you may wonder, what about the moral obligation of this debt? You know, it seems like Jane's kind of just rorted the system a little bit, ripped off the system and got away with it. My purpose in teaching this is for not for people to do that. The purpose here is to help people get rid of their killer debt fast and develop rich habits and never ever have killer debt again. Now we don't know exactly what Jane's circumstances are, or any of these people in this scenario, but for example, the kind of people that need this sort of help and need this sort of information, they may have a spouse that has suddenly gotten ill and that person's no longer working, and they still have all this killer debt sitting on their shoulders. Or maybe they lost their job, or there was some sort of natural disaster. So there's lots of reasons why people can get into a killer debt situation in their life and they don't know how to get out of it. And the rich habit solvency system will help you do that fast. Now for those people who will take this and use it and negotiate, rack up a whole bunch of killer debt and then pay it out, only paying 10%, and then do it again, well, they're not really practicing the rich habits. They're practicing poor habits. And that sort of thing's going to catch up to a person. And certainly, the more you try and do this, the more the banks are going to catch on. They're not going to let you. But furthermore, by practicing poor habits in that sense, you're really never going to be rich. It doesn't matter how much money the person gets away with. That's not the intention of what I'm sharing with you here. My intention is to help you get out of killer debt as fast as possible. And to just give you a different angle of looking at this. Keeping a good credit score isn't necessarily the best thing to do in certain situations. And it's a good idea to have a look, well, how much is it really costing you? Now, there are also other ways that you can get money fast and pay out your debt a lot quicker. There's a whole series in the Get Viable chapter in the book where I talk about ways to increase your income fast. But this is only just looking at it from one angle at this point, and that is, how do we get rid of our killer debt as fast as possible? And not many people are aware that you can do this, and not many people have even considered it. So I just wanted to share it with you. You can read the article in detail below, and if you've got any questions and feedback, please let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.